My name's Andrew, I'm 34, and until recently, I thought I had finally carved out a life that stood on its own 2 feet. I wasn't trying to prove anything to my family, I just didn't want to live under their microscope anymore. So, I bought a modest house an hour away, started my own consulting business, and slowly distanced myself from the drama that always seemed to bubble up at every holiday gathering. It wasn't that I hated them, but after years of being treated like the ungrateful son or the difficult nephew, I just got tired of pretending everything was fine. When I moved out, it wasn't some dramatic announcement. No tears, no door slamming, just a quiet departure. I thought that would make things easier. I was wrong. For the first year or two after I left, invitations to family events came less frequently. Sometimes, I'd find out about a cousin's wedding or a baby shower only after the pictures were posted on Facebook. Other times, my mom would send me a vague last-minute text like, "If you're free, brunch Sunday," no details, no warmth. It felt more like a formality than a genuine effort to include me. Still, I went to some of those events. I made polite conversation. I brought thoughtful gifts. But over time, the looks got colder, the whispers louder, and the jokes more pointed. They always made it seem like I had betrayed them by stepping away. Like choosing independence meant I thought I was better than them, but I never said that. I never said anything, really. I just wanted peace. I paid my share into the family trust, something my grandfather set up decades ago to help support relatives going through tough times. He'd built his fortune in construction and left a sizable chunk of it in a managed account. The idea was that everyone would chip in a bit each year and the fund would grow, ready to help if someone needed surgery, lost a job, or wanted to go back to school. I took that seriously. Even after moving out, I still made my annual contribution. No one ever thanked me, no one even acknowledged it, but I kept paying because it felt like the right thing to do. That brings me to this past Easter. My cousin Chelsea, one of the few people in the family I actually got along with, had messaged me the week before saying, "Hope you're coming to brunch. I told Aunt Lorraine to save you a seat next to me." I hesitated. I knew what it would be like. I'd walk in and feel the temperature in the room drop a few degrees. My mom would give me that tight-lipped smile, the one that said, "Don't make a scene." My Uncle Paul would probably make some joke about how I'd finally decided to show up. But Chelsea was worth it. She'd always been kind to me, always asked about my work, always made me feel like I wasn't some sort of black sheep. So I showed up, dressed nice. Brought a bottle of rose and a bouquet of flowers for Aunt Lorraine since she was hosting. The house looked the same as always. Big picture windows, floral centerpieces, and the faint smell of baked ham and cinnamon rolls. I stepped inside and immediately felt like I'd stepped back into a version of myself I tried to outgrow. People were mingling, laughing, passing around deviled eggs and little glasses of mimosa, and then I saw her, my Aunt Lorraine, standing near the dining table in some pastel cardigan, holding a tray of quiche like she was the queen of the county. She glanced at me, did a double take, and then walked over. Her eyes flicked down my outfit, then back up to my face, and she said it just loud enough for the nearby cousins to hear, "This table's for family only." I froze. At first, I thought maybe I'd misheard her, or maybe she was joking, but there was no humor in her voice, just that syrupy, sweet condescension I knew too well. I glanced at Chelsea, who looked horrified, then over at my mom, who was sitting at the far end of the table, sipping her mimosa with that same cold smile. "You made your choice when you moved out," and my mom added, not even looking at me. I stood there, the bouquet still in my hand, the bottle of wine sweating in the other. For a moment I actually laughed, just a soft, breathy chuckle, not because it was funny, but because I was stunned. It was like watching a slow-motion car crash and realizing you were in the front seat. I didn't say a word, just turned around and walked out the way I came. I sat in my car for a bit, not crying, not angry. Just numb. I thought about all the things I could say, all the comebacks I could throw at them, but I'd done that before. It never changed anything, so I just sat there, scrolling through my phone, trying to decide if I should go back to the city or just grab lunch at some quiet diner nearby. Then my phone buzzed. "Chelsea, I'm leaving." That was disgusting. Another buzz. Her husband, "We're with you. Give us a minute." I watched through the windshield as Chelsea stood up from the table, whispered something to her mom, and walked out. Her husband followed. A minute later, my cousin James, who just started his own business and once told me how much my financial advice had helped, stood up too. Then 2 more cousins. By the time dessert hit the table, nearly half the seats were empty. I didn't plan what happened next. I didn't have some master revenge strategy ready to go. But in that moment, seeing who stood with me, and more importantly, who didn't, I knew something had to change. And I realized just how much of myself I'd been pouring into that trust fund every year, quietly, dutifully, funding the same people who couldn't even save me a chair. I scrolled to my contacts, opened up the app we used to manage the contributions, and began typing an email. That was the moment everything started to shift, but that wasn't the end of it, not even close. By the time I got back to my place that evening, I had 3 voicemails waiting, one from Chelsea, just checking in and telling me not to feel alone. One from my cousin Daniel, sounding hesitant, asking if we could chat sometime, and one from my mom. Her voice was flat, but every word was sharpened like a blade. I don't know what kind of scene you thought you were making, Andrew. You embarrassed your family. This standoff of yours has gone on long enough. Grow up. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my laptop and logged into the family trust dashboard. Technically, I wasn't just a contributor. When my grandfather passed, he left a clause in his will stating that the first grandchild to reach financial independence, without dipping into the fund, would be given co-administrator privileges. At the time, everyone rolled their eyes and said it was a weird, old-fashioned requirement. But I got my business off the ground, paid off my loans, and qualified before anyone else. My mom said it was cute, that Grandpa had put his faith in me. I never told anyone that he'd pulled me aside once when I was 24 and said that trust will save this family one day, but only if the right person is watching the vault. I always thought he meant the money. Now I think he meant the people, so I started combing through the logs. There were dozens of transactions, some small, some eye-watering. Uncle Paul had taken out money 3 times for home repairs in the last year, despite having a 6-figure income. My sister had withdrawn $80,000 labeled education, even though she hadn't taken a class since she dropped out of her yoga certification program 2 years ago. And Aunt Lorraine, well, she'd apparently been reimbursed for a medical hardship that turned out to be liposuction from a spa clinic in Miami. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was something colder. A kind of calm that comes from watching a dam crack slowly over time and realizing it's about to burst. The next morning, I drafted a letter to the financial firm that handled oversight for the trust. I wasn't removing anyone, not yet, but I was placing a freeze on all withdrawals, pending a full audit. I cited irregularities and requested a compliance review. The kind of bureaucratic move that looks harmless on the surface, until the people used to freely dipping their fingers into the pot suddenly find the lid screwed on tight. The email went out at 9:42 a.m. At 10:17, my phone started buzzing again. Mom, decline. Uncle Paul, decline. Then a group text lit up. Did you lock the account? I can't access anything. What is going on? I didn't reply. Instead, I sent a private message to the firm. Please ensure any questions regarding the freeze are directed to me or my legal representative. I'll provide further instructions within the week. By lunch, Aunt Lorraine had sent an email addressed to the entire family with the subject line, "Inappropriate overstep." In it, she called me vindictive, unstable, and emotionally erratic. She CC'd half the cousins and included a thinly veiled threat about seeking legal advice. She even said, get this, that I had never truly been part of this family. I stared at that line for a long time, never truly been part of this family. That was it, wasn't it, the root of all of it? I was always the different one, the one who didn't go to church every Sunday, the one who asked questions about the way things were run, the one who didn't laugh at their jokes when they made fun of Chelsea's husband for being vegetarian, or when they mocked Daniel for not acting like a man. I didn't conform, and instead of respecting that, they rejected it. But here's what they didn't know. The trust wasn't the only thing I had access to. Back when Grandpa was still alive, he and I would meet for breakfast once a month. He'd order the same thing, black coffee, eggs over medium, dry rye toast. We'd talk about business, about life, about family. One day, out of nowhere, he told me, the house they all love, the lake house, they don't know it, but I put it in your name, quietly, years ago. Taxes are handled through a shell company, and the paperwork's airtight. I wanted to make sure someone who earned it would own it. I thought he was joking, but he wasn't. I pulled up the documents. Everything was their deed, transfer records, even a notarized letter from my grandfather explaining his choice. The house where we used to spend every summer. The one they'd started treating like a community clubhouse after he passed. barbecues, birthdays, even a cousin's wedding reception last fall. They never once asked permission. They didn't have to. No one knew I owned it, until now. I started drafting another email, not to the whole family, just to one person, my mom. I kept it short. Since I'm apparently not part of the family, I assume you won't mind if I exercise my legal right to enforce private ownership of the lake house. You'll find a formal notice of restricted access attached. Effective immediately, all scheduled events must be canceled. The locks will be changed Friday. Then I hit send. I leaned back, listening to the silence in my house. It was peaceful. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was defending myself. I wasn't reacting. I was acting. The phone started buzzing again, but this time I let it ring because I knew the real fallout hadn't started yet. It took less than 12 hours for the family group chat to go into full meltdown. Chelsea texted me screenshots of the chaos. First, it was my mom posting in all caps, "Who do you think you are?" Then Uncle Paul chimed in with some half-baked legal threat about stealing family property. Aunt Lorraine followed with, "Your grandfather would be ashamed." That one made me pause, not because it hurt, but because it confirmed something I'd always suspected. They had no idea who Grandpa really was. In the end, they clung to their curated image of him, the one that fit neatly into their polite dysfunction. They didn't know the man who sat across from me at breakfast and said, "Keep your head down, but keep your power close." I didn't respond. Not yet. The next morning, I received a voicemail from Daniel. His voice was low, unsure. "Hey man, I don't know everything that's going on, but for what it's worth, I think they're freaking out because they're finally realizing you're the only one who ever had any real integrity. Let me know if you want to talk." That meant something, coming from him especially. Daniel had always been caught in the middle, too kind to stand up to his dad, too tired to push back on his mom. I didn't blame him, but I also wasn't going to shield him from the storm I was about to unleash. The first knock on the door came that afternoon. I wasn't surprised to see my mom standing there. She didn't even wait for me to invite her in. She brushed past me into the living room like it was still hers. "Andrew," she said, clutching her purse with both hands like it was keeping her grounded, "we need to talk." I didn't move. I just closed the door behind her and leaned against the frame. "What's there to talk about?" I asked, calm but firm. "This drama," she said, gesturing vaguely, "locking the trust, kicking us out of the lake house. Do you even realize how this looks to the rest of the family? That's your concern?" I asked how it looks. "You're acting like a spoiled child." I laughed once, just a breath of disbelief. "You excluded me from my own family. You let Aunt Lorraine humiliate me in front of everyone. And when I walked away, you called it a scene. Now you're here in my house, demanding I keep funding the same people who treat me like a stranger. And I'm the one acting like a child." She didn't answer. She just looked at me, like she wanted to say something, anything, but couldn't find the right words. "You told me I made my choice when I moved out." I continued, my voice quiet but steady. "Well, this is your choice now. You don't get to shame me and then ask me to foot the bill." Her lips tightened. I could see the tears forming, but I didn't move. "Not this time. Not again. This isn't you," she said finally. "You're not cruel." "No," I agreed. "I'm not, but I am done being complicit." She left without another word. That night, Chelsea called me. "They're scrambling," she said. Paul tried to schedule his daughter's graduation party at the lake house next weekend. Found out the hard way it's not available. I smirked. Did he now? And get this, Lorraine tried calling the property manager, acting like she was still the owner. She practically threatened him. He hung up on her. I chuckled. Not because it was funny, but because it was all so predictable. Then she paused. "There's something else," she said. "They're planning a meeting at Grandma's place. They want to discuss options, try to pressure you into walking it back. Uncle Paul said something about voting to remove you as trustee." I felt the fire rise up again, low and steady. "They can try," I said, "but they won't like what happens next." The truth was, I'd been planning this part for weeks, ever since that Easter brunch. At first, it had just been a thought. What if I stopped funding the dysfunction? But the more I dug into the paperwork, the more I realized just how much control I actually had. Grandpa hadn't just given me administrative privileges. He'd given me power of amendment, meaning I could revise parts of the trust if I saw fit to protect its long-term value. It wasn't a carte blanche, but it gave me room, and I'd already started working with a lawyer to redraw the bylaws. But I hadn't sent the final version yet, because I was waiting for them to show their teeth. Waiting for them to confirm what I already knew. that to them, I was nothing more than a wallet with a heartbeat. 2 days later, the email came, subject line, special family meeting attendance expected. No greeting, no apology, just a time, a place, and an assumption that I would show up and sit quietly while they lectured me on family values. I stared at the message for a long time, then I hit forward, sent it to my lawyer, and added one line, they've made their move. Let's make ours. I didn't attend the meeting. Instead, at exactly the time it was scheduled to start 6:00 p.m., sharp on a Sunday, I sent out the final draft of the amended trust to the entire family mailing list. It was attached to a formal letter from my attorney, written in neutral legalese but leaving no room for misinterpretation. The subject line read, Notice of Trust Reorganization effective immediately. The email was brief. Dear family, following recent concerns regarding misuse of the family trust, failure to maintain transparency, and repeated personal harassment directed toward one of its primary contributors and co-trustees, the structure and access privileges of the trust have been legally revised, effective immediately. All non-contributing beneficiaries are suspended pending individual financial review. All withdrawal requests must now be accompanied by detailed documentation and board approval. New bylaw, any current beneficiary found guilty of discriminatory behavior, exclusion of family members, or misuse of trust funds will be permanently removed from the trust. Administration will now be overseen by an independent fiduciary board, including a third-party auditor, to ensure fairness. This is not an act of revenge. It is a restructuring to return the trust to its original intent. Support, not entitlement. You are welcome to reach out with any concerns. I suggest you do so with respect. Andrew, then I turned off my phone, opened a bottle of wine, and sat on my porch, listening to the sound of birds over the treetops. I knew the fallout would be loud, and it was. When I turned my phone back on the next morning, there were 47 missed calls, 18 voicemails, and over 100 texts. Most were from the usual suspects, my mom, Uncle Paul, Aunt Lorraine, screaming into the void. My mom said I had humiliated the family. Paul accused me of being a dictator. Lorraine, in a voice shrill with panic, kept repeating the phrase, "You don't get to do this, you don't get to do this." But here's the thing, I did, legally, ethically, and maybe for the first time in my life, morally. Chelsea texted me later that morning, "You just lit a match in a room soaked in gasoline. I'm proud of you." Daniel wrote too, quietly, "I know it's messy, but thank you. You did what no one else ever had the spine to do." Even my cousin Natalie, who hadn't said 2 words to me since I moved out, emailed me to say she'd always felt like the trust was being abused, and that maybe now some real help could go to people who actually needed it. In the following weeks, things got quiet, not because people had changed, but because they'd lost access to what really fueled their entitlement, my silence. Without it, they had to confront the mess they'd made. The family meeting I skipped apparently devolved into chaos. According to Chelsea, voices were raised, fingers pointed, and someone actually cried. Not out of remorse, but out of panic, the realization that the money train had derailed. My mom didn't speak to me for almost 2 months, and I didn't chase her. I didn't send follow-up texts or try to fix things like I used to. I just waited, let the silence hang there like a mirror she couldn't look away from. Eventually, she called, not to apologize, at least not at first. She started with small talk, as if the last few months hadn't happened, but I didn't let her dance around it. "Why did you let them treat me like that?" I asked. At brunch at Christmas, every time I came around, she didn't answer for a long time. Then she said, "Because if I stood up for you, I'd lose them." That landed harder than I expected, not because it shocked me. Not because it hurt, but because it confirmed something I'd always feared deep down. I was never her priority. Keeping the peace with the rest of the family meant more than protecting her own son. It had always been that way. I was just finally saying it out loud. "I guess you lost me instead," I said. There was silence, then a sigh. "I don't want to," she said. "I don't want to lose you." I didn't respond right away, because I wasn't sure how to. But after a moment I said, "Then stop treating me like I'm disposable." We talked for a while longer. She didn't magically transform into the mom I needed, but there was a shift, a tremor under the surface. I think she finally saw what her silence had cost her. The trust fund didn't collapse, by the way. In fact, under the new system, it started thriving. With the third-party oversight, the wasteful withdrawals stopped. We implemented a scholarship arm, created emergency grants for medical situations, and even launched a small business seed fund for cousins who wanted to start their own ventures. And this time, everything was transparent. One of the first recipients, Daniel, he launched a small landscaping company. The trust matched his startup investment under clear, enforceable terms. He sent me a photo of his first big project, a rooftop garden for a local elementary school. In the message, he wrote, "You helped me believe I could do this. Thanks for not letting them ruin everything." And Chelsea, she became the second co-administrator. We added her to the board after she voluntarily submitted her own financials and helped design the accountability structure. She was sharp, compassionate, and deeply committed to making the trust what Grandpa intended. As for the rest of them, Uncle Paul tried to sue, didn't get far. The documents Grandpa signed were airtight. The lawyer Grandpa had used had seen what was coming. Even back then, Paul wasted a lot of money trying to bully his way back into control. He ended up in more debt than before. At one point, he left a voicemail growling, "You're going to regret this." I played it on speaker while Chelsea and I reviewed scholarship applications. We both laughed. Aunt Lorraine was more passive, aggressive. She posted cryptic status updates on Facebook. Things like, "Blood doesn't mean loyalty. Family is supposed to support you, not exile you." She kept tagging people who'd unfollowed her months earlier. One time, she even tagged me. I blocked her. My sister, she said nothing, didn't reach out, just disappeared from the map. Part of me was relieved. Part of me mourned the idea of the sister I once thought I had. Mom's trying. Slowly. I don't pretend things are healed, but when she showed up to my birthday dinner this year, on time with a small box and no snide remarks, it meant something. The card inside the box just said, "Thank you for making things better." Even when I didn't understand, I kept it. The lake house, it's not off limits, but now people ask permission, and they respect the answer. We reopened it for family reunions, invitation only. This year, Chelsea and I hosted a summer barbecue. We grilled by the water, played board games on the deck, and watched the kids build sandcastles, just like we used to. Some family didn't come. Others did nervously, unsure if they were still welcome. The ones who stayed late into the night, laughing under the patio lights. Those are the ones who never needed the trust fund to remember what family actually means. I still walk down to the dock, sometimes sit at the edge, legs dangling above the water, just like I used to with Grandpa. I think about the choices I made, the silence I broke, the storm I caused, and I don't regret a single second of it. Because sometimes the only way to fix a broken legacy is to burn the rotten parts down and rebuild it from ash.